Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. So there are major ISPs installing broadband as quickly as they can, getting that in the ground as quickly as they can. In some cases with funding, in some cases without. Why are they doing that? Talk about that in just a minute. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Broadband Deployment News. So as I mentioned, there are large ISPs, major cable MSOs like Cox and Comcast and Charter, and there's other operators, Brightspeed, that are installing fiber as quickly as they can. So even these cable operators, I mean, that's basically their play now when they're edging out their territories or looking at new territories. It's all fiber. They're not doing DOCSIS plant, cable plant there because fiber, is easier, more future-proof, more reliable. So they're taking advantage of that in these new territories where they're installing brand new infrastructure. So why are they doing this? Well, there's good reasons. That there's things we can be happy about. There's some people that are not happy about this. In the end, I think it's going to be good. But we're seeing a lot of this activity, and a lot of it, even though some of it's not funded from, let's say, federal or state dollars, some of it they're doing it on their own. A lot of it has to do with the funding that's coming. So I think that's really what's driving this. So we'll take a look at this, a couple of these articles that I saw. So here you see Comcast commits to 9 million broadband expansion in Kansas. Comcast announced plans to extend its network to more than 3,400 locations in Spring Hill, Kansas, as it continues efforts to expand its footprint and boost broadband growth. Including the newly announced project, Comcast has publicly disclosed expansions in at least 7 states so far this year and won grants for projects in 3 more. So again, some of these are funded by grants, some are not. Though Comcast says it plans to work with the city of Spring Hill on the 2-year, $9 million project, city officials noted the build will be solely funded by the operator. No tax dollars or financial investment from the city will go into the project. So if the city's looking at doing this and they're talking to a large operator like this, they might realize they have a little bit of leverage on something like this because the provider might do it without even getting any funds if the city is willing to work with them on this. In March, it announced plans to reach nearly 5,000 customers via an expansion project in Silverton, Oregon. This is Comcast. And it also would spend $22 million to extend its network to more than 18,000 new locations in Eagle Mountain, Utah. In June, it highlighted plans to build to more than 2,000 locations in Vermont. In Florida, builds are underway. In April, Comcast executives outlined plans to reach at least 800,000 new passings this year through edge-out builds. Comcast already added 174,000 homes passed in Q1 2022 and another 226,000 in Q2. That means it has 400,000 passings left to hit in the back half of the year to reach its target. So Comcast obviously is very, very busy these days. Then you've got Charter and Comcast. It mentions wins Alabama rural broadband grants. So this is also Comcast, but Charter as well. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey today announced grants totaling more than $26 million to provide broadband in various rural areas of the state. 9 grants will go to broadband providers across the state, with the largest chunk going to Charter, also known as Spectrum Southeast and Comcast. So Charter is getting $7.26 million, Comcast is getting $11.6 million. Farmers Telecommunications is receiving $7.8 million. So that's in Alabama. Then you've got Brightspeed to pass 120,000 addresses in Indiana. These guys are really making a lot of announcements. Brightspeed continues its methodical run of announcements with the news that it will pass more than 120,000 Indiana addresses with fiber broadband. More than 50,000 passings in 20 counties will be completed by the end of next year. An additional 70,000 passings will be deployed in subsequent years. To date, the company has made announcements for deployments in Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, South Carolina, Arkansas, North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, Alabama, Ohio, Louisiana, Missouri, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Tennessee, in addition to Indiana. 4 more announcements are expected. They're doing this with XGS PON or 10 gig PON and Wi-Fi 6, which I'm assuming what they're saying there is the router in the customer's home will support Wi-Fi 6 for fast access within the home, and then 10 gig available on the network. According to telecompetitor calculations, Brightspeed has announced a total of 3.043 million passings, with 1.37 million of those in the first phase and 1.906 million slated for subsequent years. So this is all not, this is not necessarily saying it's going to happen right away. I thought there were some dates in here. Maybe I passed that. Well, anyway, so this is, so you see here, this was through an acquisition. They're going through this process to acquire ILEC assets from Lumen Technologies in 20 states. The last step is the official closing of the transaction, which is expected early in the fourth quarter. Brightspeed says that it plans to spend $2 billion to reach as many as 3 million homes and businesses during the next 5 years. In many cases, the company says that it hopes to work with local entities to push beyond the announced builds. In Indiana, the identified local stakeholder is the Office of Community and Rural Affairs. So, and you see here they announced other projects in some other states. So in this case, this is, again, they're acquiring Lumen territories, and they're going to be upgrading all of that with fiber, and they're trying to work with these local communities. So if they can get in there with the local communities and say, hey, we're going to be doing this, we're moving forward, then as the local communities get their grants through something like BEAD, they're going to be working, I'm sure Brightspeed says, well, work with us, we're on plans of doing this. So they're trying to kind of edge out the competition here by overbuilding these, I think, acquired infrastructure assets that they've gotten with fiber, and be able to get funds to do that. So they're making all of these announcements kind of lock that in, I believe. Then you've got here, this is high-speed internet access coming to some 500 homes, small businesses in Livingston Parish. High-speed internet access, Spectrum and internet service providers announced it's been awarded $1.73 million grant to help fund the Livingston Parish broadband infrastructure expansion. Spectrum received the funds through the grant, my favorite acronym, the Granting Unserved Municipals Broadband Opportunities, or the GUMBO grant here in Louisiana, and is also committed to invest another $1.25 million to extend its broadband network in Livingston Parish. The total investment in the Livingston project will be close to $3 million. Spectrum's $1.73 million grant is part of a $10 million GUMBO award to help connect 2,167 homes and small businesses in 3 Louisiana parishes, Livingston, St. Landry, and St. Tammany. And then there's another parish, I think it was East Carroll Parish, that got some money. Connexon was going to be doing something there, and then at the very last minute, an incumbent came in, Sparklight. I mean, literally the last minute, like the last day, came in and issued a challenge and said, wait a minute, we serve like 2,000 to 3,000 homes in this area. So that the last minute they threw that challenge in there and kind of mucked up that build that was really getting to start, I believe, on that day. So we'll have to see what happens with that, and if Sparklight really does serve these areas, or some of those areas, not all of them, and what that means. There needs to be something on these challenges where there's a consequence if a provider comes in and they challenge something and then they don't really, like they say, hey, we provide service here, and then that delays things because we've got all of these funds that are going to be coming. We've got new maps that are going to be coming that are going to be able to be challenged, and there needs to be a consequence for people that are challenging things just for the point of trying to gum up the works here and try to keep competition out. Competition is a good thing, but you don't want to be challenging something if that's not a true challenge. So that was something that was going on in Louisiana, saw recently. And then you've got high-speed internet on its way to Douglas. This is Arizona. This is City of Douglas and Cochise College's Douglas campus will be receiving an upgrade to their internet service due to Cox Communications. So this is Cox, another big cable operator, being awarded $8.2 billion roughly by the Arizona Commerce Authority's Arizona Broadband Development Grant to expand broadband coverage for the city's nearly 8,000 residents and college campus, multi-gigabit, all-fiber network. So again, that's what they're moving forward with. The average download speeds in Douglas, I guess now, are about 20 to 25 meg, which is inclusive of all ISPs that offer services in Douglas. Upload speeds average around 3 meg. So again, these are areas that would be considered pretty much unserved if they're like 20 to 25 and 3 meg up. Then they're pretty much considered unserved and would be eligible for something like BEAD grants. So you've got Comcast, you've got Cox coming in there. So these are areas that are not going to be unserved once Cox expands in this area. And that's the same for these other areas. As if Brightspeed deploys all of this stuff, and it sounds like Brightspeed's not going to get all of this infrastructure, and some of this stuff's not going to be until sometime next year or the year after that Brightspeed's doing. But again, if they're working with the local authorities there, then they will be the provider that they will go to with grant funds. And then you've got Comcast that's edging out in areas. Some of those are funded, some are not. So why are they doing that? Well, again, it's because all of this money is out there waiting. So every day we're seeing more and more broadband being deployed because somebody like Comcast knows, well, I've got this adjacent area in my territory that I've never wanted to serve before, so I just left it there. And of course, that's not been good. But now with all of this money hanging out there, they're either trying to work with the states on getting some state grants, maybe through some ARPA funds, something like that, where they can then serve that area. And even if the state doesn't work with them on grants, or they don't get grants, they still are paying for that and edging that area out, because they know that if they don't, then a competitor is going to be able to come in there with federal funds and to be able to build out right next to them. So they are trying to lock out as much territory as they can right now. That's a good thing in ways, because we get the broadband out there quicker. It means that those dollars that are waiting out there, those BEAD dollars, will go further to the areas that really, really need that money. Because if Comcast is going to spend their own money to go serve an area, it probably means that it was not some of the more expensive area to cover and some of the areas where it'd be hardest to make a profit. It's just an area that was, they didn't expand into because it was less profitable. So I'm thinking if they're expanding out there now, they can make a business case for it, especially if they're paying their own money. And that means that area is then covered. And then again, all of these really, really high cost areas that are going to be very expensive, then we've got more money to throw at those. And then you can have people that will get funded for that, and then will take the risk, the return risk on being able to fund that, and hopefully be able to make money over time to be able to pay for that service as they get customers. So I think that's what's going on here. And as I've said before, each day it seems like we're seeing more and more broadband being deployed, even before we're talking about any of this money that's coming down the road. And what that means to me is that we will be seeing that money that we're waiting on, that $45.2 billion in BEAD. We're going to see that go further, because there's going to be fewer areas that need to be covered by the time we finally get the FCC maps, and by the time the challenges are finally over and we say, okay, who's unserved? The number of unserved is going to be quite a bit smaller than it is today. That's due to these kind of deployments that we're hearing about here. And that's due, as I mentioned the other day when I was talking about 5G, that's due to operators like T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon, and the 5G deployments that they're doing. Because 5G is considered, if it's a licensed spectrum, it's considered reliable broadband under BEAD. And therefore, if T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon, one of these folks have got 5G service that they're covering this big swath of area with, that is no longer something that's supposed to be on the map as unserved or underserved. So any money that would be allocated from BEAD would not be anywhere near in the first rounds of that. It's possible, again, if there's a lot of money in BEAD, because we have more and more areas that are covered by the time those BEAD funds are available, that money could go to overbuild, because it was never said that the money couldn't go to be overbuilding somebody, like let's say an area that's only got 5G. But the first goal of BEAD is to make sure that every unserved and then underserved area is covered. So every area that is 25 by 3 or less, or any area that's 100 by 20 or less, which would be unserved, is covered. Once that's done, then any funds that are left over, it's fair game, and those could be used to overbuild areas where maybe there's not enough competition, prices are high. That's one of the concerns that people have about the big, huge MSOs or large national telephone companies coming in and doing coverage there, is that it means that you've got a monopoly that's maybe still existing there. Some people worry that if it's a really remote area, they won't be able to really make the ROI work, and then after 10 years they abandon it. I've heard that question. I don't foresee that, but some people worry about the fact that these major, huge incumbents have acted monopolistically in the past, and maybe they don't have the best service because they're a national operator. They don't have a lot of local people working there, whereas a independent local operator, local phone company, local cable company, local town, municipality provider, or an EMC, they all kind of live in that area, and you've got a face to the company, and they're going to church and school and work, and they live, work, and play with those people every day. So they see them and they want to make sure that they have good service. And a lot of times they're using the service themselves, so they know how it's going. So that's a concern about this. But again, our major goal is to get everybody covered by good quality broadband, and then hopefully be able to find ways that people can afford it. Competition is the best way to get people to afford it if you have more than one operator, and sometimes that's difficult in these really costly areas, because you have one operator that's going to come in and do it, and either they get funding or they don't. Either way, it doesn't matter. If there's one operator there and they're providing good broadband, there's not a lot of business case for a second operator to come in, because you've got fewer customers, you've got more miles, and it's hard enough for one operator to be able to get a return on their investment based on the amount of maintenance costs covering a lot of those miles, plus the fact that there's fewer customers to pay for service. So I think it's going to be hard to get multiple providers covering broadband throughout the country. It's easy in urban areas because there's plenty of customers, there's short drives to go from house to house, and so therefore your return is much, much better. But as you get these long, long runs and few customers here and there, then it's much harder to make it pay. So, but goal number one, get everybody access to good broadband, and then try to find ways to make it as affordable as possible. That's it. So thanks for joining me. Give me a like on this if you liked it. And if you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, click the little bell. You'll be notified when I'm live. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.